I'm Mindy Peterson, and this is Enhanced Life with Music, where we explore the practical ways music transforms everyday life, health, happiness, and beyond. When you hear the word creativity, you probably first think about artists, musicians, designers. But what happens when AI can generate art, music, and ideas at speeds that we humans can't match? And they can also write, code, and design. What's left for humans? For the first time, business leaders, educators, and policymakers are asking the same question: what makes humans irreplaceable? There is a brand new book out there that answers this question and provides a roadmap for implementing the answer. The book is called Creativity's Edge: Unleashing Humanity's Greatest Asset in the Age of AI. Joining me today is the author, Susan Riley. Susan is an internationally recognized educator, author, and a leading voice in creativity and learning. A former music educator, she is founder of the Institute for Arts Integration in STEAM. Her work has been featured by the U.S. Department of Education, NPR, and Americans for the Arts, and her resources reach millions of educators every year. Congratulations on your new book, and welcome to Enhanced Life with Music, Susan.
Thank you so much, Minnie. It is my just absolute pleasure to be here.
I'm so thrilled to have you. I'm so excited to talk about your book. Susan, you know this, but I'm just going to explain to listeners. I first discovered your work on LinkedIn and thought, ooh, this looks really interesting, this work on arts integration and STEAM. So I reached out to you about being a guest on this show, and you said yes. But I have this new book coming out. Could we talk about that too? And so I was kind of like, okay, send it over. I'll take a look at it. You did. And wow, I read the book and I was like, okay, STEAM and arts integration can work. Although there's, of course, overlap with your book too. But we just need to talk about this book because I absolutely loved it. I want to introduce my audience to it. It just released February 19, so it's available for listeners to get their hands on it. Starting out, tell us who this book is for. You've done so much work with and for educators.
Yeah.
And this book is definitely a gold mine for educators, but it's not just for educators. So tell us who's it for?
Absolutely. So, my entire career has been based in K-12 education, and I started out as a music teacher. So I love your podcast and your people because you are my people, right?
Yes.
But the thesis for the book actually started with the question, if creativity is so important, if this is the thing that's going to set us apart, why is it not more important in what we teach, in how we live, in just everyday life, right? And so the audience for this, there's a lot in here for educators. That's my natural audience. But there's also pieces in here for parents who want to cultivate creativity for their children and for just humans who are looking for an edge when it comes to the new reality. There's a lot in here. Every chapter has a reflective, creative exercise that you can use to both summarize and kind of think through the chapter yourself, but also that you can start to use as a creative habit or a practice to enhance your own creative skills and build those so that you become unstoppable in the workplace. So it's really designed for anybody who's looking to be more creative.
Yeah. And you do have quite a bit of targeted information for business leaders, for professionals, whether they're leading a team or they just want to utilize this information in their own professional life. Policymakers, creators, lifelong learners. You talked about parents. Anyone who has littles in their life, whether they're educators, parents, grandparents, caregivers. So yes, and like you said, anyone who wants that creative edge in this new world that we're living in. So love that.
Yeah. I want to have people spark a conversation, right? Like that's the whole point. I want us to start having a dialogue around this because it's too important for us not to, right? At all levels. And so my publisher kind of got a little frustrated. They were like, you should really tighten this a little bit in your audience. Do you really? And so, there's a little bit more in there for educators, but it's really for anybody who's looking to use that for their advantage moving forward.
Sure. Well, and I feel your pain in trying to tighten it because I feel the same way with my podcast. It's like
Yeah.
music and the benefits of music apply to everybody, whether you
Yes.
consider yourself a musician or not. So it
Yeah.
I find it hard to tighten that down because it's like, yeah, it's for anyone who wants to make their life better with music. So
Yeah.
get that. And you mentioned some of the practical aspects of your book too, and what's included in some of the chapters. And that was something that really stood out to me as the wonderful blend that it was of science, going back to the research, but also very practical application, case studies in real life,
Hmm.
practical starter questions and tips and tactics and strategies. So it's really
Yeah.
a wonderful blend of all of those things.
Well, thank you. That's my goal.
Yes, yes. Hit the ball out of the park with that.
Good.
So tell us, why does creativity matter more than ever? And how did it become the number one human skill in an AI age?
Yeah. So, we've been talking about creativity for a long time. And I said I've been in education for at least 25 years at this point. And I don't think there's been a time since I stepped into a classroom where we haven't been talking about creativity being the skill that we need to cultivate for 21st century learners, right? But it's kind of been this background noise. Like, oh yeah, we need creativity, but that's a soft skill. That's not something that you can necessarily train. It's not something we need to invest in because we can just kind of add it to the background of what we're doing and teaching. We can, take a painting class if you need to up your skills and get creative in some way and want to enhance your well-roundedness, right, as a human. I don't think anybody really took it seriously until until AI started its this open pathway, and suddenly people are writing, they're designing, they're, making music videos. I mean, Sora 2 just blew our minds in the last 6 months with the quality of video, and you don't know anymore even when you're looking at something, is that AI? Is it
Sure.
not? I mean, the amount of rapid development that
Yeah,
AI has done and the amount that it's already started to replace various industries, various jobs. We know based on, a lot of different research from the field that a significant amount of jobs are going to be replaced in the next 5 years alone. And so I think suddenly people got really scared of, well, what does that do for me as a human? Like, what can AI do that I can't, and vice versa?
yeah,
And creativity is really the thing that sets it apart. It is the number one superpower that is going to allow humans to have that advantage that AI doesn't have. And yes, AI can write, but can it write like a human? Can it write with a soul? No. It's not there. It's never going to be able to do that. And that's because creativity and curiosity are interlinked in a really beautiful way for humans. AI can only do as much as you can prompt it to do. You've got to ask it the right questions. You've got to frame it in the right way. I don't know if you've ever been on a chat bot or on ChatGPT, but you're asking a question and it doesn't answer it quite the way you want. And you're like spending 15, 20 minutes.
sure.
How can I ask this in the way that I want to get the response that I need? Right.
Yep, yep. What
It's
prompts
that,
will get me the results I need?
yes, right. AI can only do what we are asking it to do. And in order for for that to set us apart, you have to be creative enough to think critically, creatively, with curiosity. It's all interconnected. And that is the spirit, I call it the fingerprint of each human that is different. It is the thing that it is your secret sauce. And so you have to cultivate that. It is no longer optional. I am dead serious. It is no longer optional. If you do not cultivate your creativity, your skill set, the ability to ask good questions, get curious, and be creative, you will be left behind. There is no doubt about it.
And I want to point out, this isn't just you saying this. This is
Yeah.
according to the World Economic Forum. The jobs that AI can't replace will be the ones that I think they kind of put them into two basic categories: creativity and care-based
Yep.
services.
Caregiving,
Yeah.
caregiving, and creative skills.
And
Yep.
then McKinsey and pretty much any future of work report is
Yep.
pinpointing creativity and sometimes some other thing, like you said, the caregiving, critical thinking, which complex problem solving, that sort of, in my mind, falls under the umbrella of creativity. But those are the skills that everybody's pointing to that AI cannot replicate.
Right.
What does the research actually say about creativity as a competitive advantage? When we, like I said, your book has so much research and science in it. Tell us what some of that research does say.
Well, I try to break that down in ways that people don't glaze over,
Oh,
right? Because that's
totally
the
successful in that. Yes.
good, because
Yes.
that's the thing, that's the key, right? So research does tell us that creativity is the hallmark, number one, of humans in and of themselves, the thing that does separate you from AI. This is new research, clearly, because AI has been around. It's been around since the 50s, right?
I thought
Dartmouth
that
is
was
where it really started.
so intriguing that the term was first coined in 1956.
Yes,
That
at
kind of
Dartmouth
blew my mind,
University.
at Dartmouth, which my son goes
Yes.
there, so shout out to Dartmouth, yay. So the
Yeah, but this idea of AI, what is it, how it's kind of evolved, has been around since the 50s. It just didn't get into the general public vernacular until now.
Well,
So,
and
while
it's
there's
been
research.
used, like, I mean, when I was learning how to drive, we used physical paper maps. Now,
Yes,
for years now, we've used MapQuest and now
GPS.
Google Maps and Apple Maps and, all of that. So we haven't necessarily referred to that as AI, but it is. There's so
Yeah,
many other aspects of AI that we have been using, whether it's online shopping and finding algorithms for that or social media. We're just not necessarily calling it that until more recently, and it's really hitting home now, like, ooh, this is artificial intelligence, and this is how it's
yes.
affecting me personally. We're more aware of it.
Yeah, well, and it's an evolving technology, right? It's just like when you think of a computer, in the 60s, they took up massive amounts of rooms,
Yep.
right, for a computer,
Yep.
and now you have it on your phone, right?
Yeah.
So, it's an evolving technology just like anything else. And so, while the research, there's been research in AI for a while since then, but it's not ever been, again, a massive amount until the last 5 years or so. And so because of that, it's difficult to say, this is going to be replaced. This is not. You have to work with future trending. You have to look at the evolution of everything else. And again, AI doesn't live in a container. And so when we're looking at the research, you have to look at the research as a whole. But essentially, you're right in what is everybody is kind of coming to the same conclusion based on the research that they're looking at, the trends that they're looking at, and the last 30 years along with an upcoming 30. It's very clear that where we are with AI right now will look very different in 18 months. This is a rapidly evolving opportunity for the world, right? And at the same time, it is putting our aspect of humanity in very stark contrast. And we are starting to ask very important questions. I mean, the workplace itself will look very different in the next 5 years. I have a daughter who's going to college next year. She's a senior in high school right now. And when she's looking at the field of work and she's asking her peers, like, what are you going to major in? None of them know. I
Mm,
mean, they have an idea. Oh, I'm going to be an English major. I'm going to do this. But they're all recognize when we graduate, everything's going to look different.
sure.
So, so what's interesting is that when you take a look at that, that means that the skills that they're developing or that they want to develop have nothing necessarily to do with the careers that they plan to go into. So, for example, I'll give you another example. Um, One of my daughter's best friends would like to go into neuroscience, right? And you would think that she's got to have a set of classes, clearly, biology, a very heavy science based curriculum, right?
Yeah.
Yes. And for her, she values being able to think through a problem in a way that maybe others can't. So she is actually planning on taking courses in creativity, in creative thought and thinking, and being able to look at lateral thinking. Specifically, she's looking at how do I take a look at both different sides that I'm not recognizing and looking at a problem in a different way because the science is probably going to be outdated by the time I get into a hospital, right? And
Sure.
do my residency. But teaching me how to think, that's going to be something that I can use no matter where and what it looks like.
Ah.
So being aware of that, I think has been a really interesting development for our students who are headed into higher ed. It's something that higher ed is again, facing a huge challenge along with everything else that higher ed is facing right now. How do you prepare students to enter a world that will look different from the time they're a freshman to the time they're a senior?
Sure.
You know? So yeah, there's a lot going on. It's a really exciting, rapidly evolving field.
Well,
And
that's great that these high
yeah,
school seniors are recognizing that things are going to look so different and that they're thinking about things like that student that you referred to who's looking at neuroscience, but also looking at creative thinking and things like that. So that's great they're recognizing that. You mentioned earlier that we have been talking about creativity for a long time, but it's been sort of more of a lip service
mhm,
type of a talking and discussion about creativity. And this next question, I know we could spend forever on, but just kind of in a nutshell, answer this. And I think
yeah,
listeners probably know a little bit of the answer to this, but
yeah.
talk about how the value of creativity is being reflected or not reflected in our schools and workplaces. Is this value being placed on creativity when we look at what's being taught?
Eh. It depends on where you go. So, what's really interesting and what if you unfold all of the layers, if you were to ask an educator, what's the thing that's stopping creativity from being taught in your school? The first answer they're going to give you is standardized testing, without a doubt. We've done polls on this multiple times. We've seen this in other research. And that is true, but that's not really the answer. You have to peel it back even further. Standardized testing didn't come into our schools until the 1960s. And that was done during the first evolution of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act by Congress. Those tests were actually based on tests that were given during World War II to determine if somebody was capable of fighting on the lines or if they needed to be placed somewhere else when they were drafted. So those tests were only loosely started to be used in the 60s. And the reason that they started to evolve was because of money. Where we were placing our money determines where we place our value. And at that point, our value was being able to read, write, use math, be successful in an industrial economy. Well, we also know that once you start getting money, you don't really want to give that up. And so we've seen a lot of money being thrown at various kinds of programming, curriculum companies, things that keep us in the status quo. And that is the real reason that we're starting to see differences in pockets of who uses creativity and who doesn't. Creativity actually thrives in constraint. So for schools that don't have a lot, sometimes you'll see a massive explosion of creativity because they have no other option, right? Like this is the thing they
Yeah, I
can
love
use,
yeah,
right?
I loved how you talk about that in your book. I mean, it's sort of counterintuitive, but I totally get it.
Yeah. Whereas at other schools,
Poverty is the mother of invention. Isn't that the saying that you
absolutely. And
you're
and we often think, oh, you need a lot of money in order to use creativity or have approaches like arts integration or STEAM or maker labs or all the things, right? No, you don't.
mm,
Creativity doesn't require objects, right? Creativity is a process. And so you can do that with a paper tube that you use from the recycled from your toilet paper. You know what I
yep.
mean? That doesn't matter. It doesn't that money piece is actually that constraint actually allows for more creativity. That's why you'll often see private schools, schools that have a ton of money, don't actually leverage creativity as much as they could because their outcome is still very much based in how do I get the student to college or to this particular career. And so creativity is possible and it thrives in some schools, it doesn't in others, and really it's a matter of our priorities.
Mm.
And so this is a conversation that can easily be had by parents, school district administrators, teachers, the board of ed members, and having a conversation around if creativity is so important, we need to place the value in that now. What does that look like for us? Is that embedded across curriculum? Is that more arts classes? What does that look like for us?
Well, and talking about standardized testing too, there's so much that you address in the book about you call it the measurement conundrum. Can we
Yeah.
evaluate and measure and assess creativity in schools? And more importantly, should we? And you have a
Yeah.
whole chapter on assessing creativity and how to do it, how not to do it. what ways stifle creativity, actually, which ways encourage it. So, some really practical ideas, but also some philosophical approaches to that whole question of how do we measure it? How do we assess it? So, loved all of that information. And that's another topic we could spend an entire
Absolutely.
podcast episode on. But I just want to make sure listeners know if they're thinking, well, yeah, but how do you measure it? There's lots in the book that addresses that question.
Yeah.
I'm always looking for the best ways to support holistic health and well-being through music and beyond. So when I learned about all natural products created by a holistic biologic dentist, I had to try them out. Did you know that chemicals in commercial mouthwash and toothpaste can be absorbed through the oral tissues even if you don't swallow the product? One of my favorite Living Well with Dr. Michelle products is the Remineralizing Mouthwash. It's alcohol free, so it won't dry out your mouth. And instead of harsh chemicals, it uses colloidal silver to help balance oral bacteria. It's infused with peppermint oil to freshen your breath naturally, and it contains hydroxyapatite, the very mineral your enamel is made of, to support strong teeth and reduce sensitivity. I also love their sensitive remineralizing tooth powder, but I couldn't resist trying their brand new toothpaste. It's not officially labeled for sensitivity, but it's made with microhydroxyapatite, which many people, myself included, find reduces sensitivity. For natural, effective oral care products and 10% off, go to livingwellwithdrmichelle.com and use coupon code MUSICENHANCES10. Link is in the show notes. You also talk quite a bit in the book about, are we stuck with whatever creative ability we're born with, or can it be developed? And what would you say to someone who says they aren't creative? I just heard a good friend say this in the last week. Well, I'm just not a creative person. What do you say to those people?
You're inherently a creative person if you're breathing. If you
I
are
love
still
it.
breathing, you are creative. The problem is that everybody thinks of creativity as a skill-based product, right? Like, I'm not an artist. I can't draw because I can only do stick figures, or I can't sing in a bucket, right? Those are skill-based items and methods of or modes of transportation of your creativity, right? If you think of it that way. Like, as a musician, that's my mode of being creative. It doesn't mean that because I can't draw anything else other than a stick figure that I am not a creative person.
Well, and back to our introduction where I
Yeah.
said when people hear the word creativity, they automatically think about musicians and artists,
Right.
or designers, something like that. But that's not the extent of creativity.
No, it's embedded within us. And there's a whole thing in the book. We talk about the 4 branches of creativity, and it's more than just the skills. It's also how you apply them. It's how you cultivate creative thinking. And there's lots of different ways to do that, and creative expression. So just being able to express yourself, even if that is in listening to something and then being able to respond to what you heard. There's creativity embedded within all of us. It's our fingerprint. So literally you have it inside of you. It's just a matter of finding the thing that lights you up, that turns you on, and then chasing that as much as you can.
Well, and I thought it was so interesting in your book that you talk about when your brain is lighting up with those creative aha moments. It doesn't matter if it's a creative moment in music,
Mhm.
in the arts overall, or if it's in solving a problem with your team,
Yeah.
or solving like a aha moment with a parenting solution or an engineering issue. It doesn't matter. The same parts of your brain are lighting up.
Yes.
So I thought that was really interesting.
Yes. Also, during that idea of lighting up in your brain, there's so many interesting things that happen in your brain when you're in the middle of the creative process, because typically our brains, each side kind of shuts on and shuts off depending on what we're trying to access, right? Like, we have our default mode network, that's our daydreaming system, and our executive control network, which is where we have organization and decision making. And typically one is working while the other is quiet. But during a creative episode, when you're working through something creatively, that changes. The networks stop taking turns and they start playing together, almost like a concert. So they start working together like an improv, like a jazz improv piece, where what starts turning on in one side starts clicking in the other, and they respond to one another and they start to synchronize. When we take a look at MRIs, we can see that in the brain that these areas actually begin to synchronize, which is really rare. That's one of the things that, like, when we start to take a look at the science of creativity and what is happening in that and how it leads to flow state and all of that good stuff, it literally, we know this, right? It builds our health. It allows us to change our brains, in the areas of neuroscience when we're looking at how our brains can stay healthy. This is certainly one of them, but it's more than that. Like, it is the thing that makes you different. Your brain is going to synchronize differently than mine when we're in creative states. And that's what I mean when I say that everybody has a creative fingerprint. It's yours and yours alone. And so you have to learn how to follow that in order to bring your secret sauce, right?
Yes. Well, and I love all the neuroscience that you walk readers through in your book. One of the aspects of that I loved was where you talk about the three phases of creativity.
Mhm.
And you talk about this interplay that you're mentioning between the key neural networks. You talk about one phase of creativity being divergent, and you call it the wild child, where it's just like these wild ideas like, ooh, what if, this or that.
Yep.
And then a second one is convergent, where it's like the practical problem solver.
Yeah.
And then the third one, lateral thinking, is like the rebellious genius who doesn't just think outside the box, but it questions like, why do we even need a box? What is the box? And so I love that because I think, again, when people hear the word creativity, they might think, I'm not creative. I'm this practical problem solver. Well, that is creativity.
Yeah.
And as you mentioned, we all have these three different faces of creativity, maybe to varying degrees, but they do all sort of synchronize and work together in concert when we have these creative aha moments. So it was so fascinating to read about some of that neuroscience in the book.
Yeah.
You just referred to also the art and the science of flow. You talk quite a bit about that. Tell listeners just a little bit about that neuroscience of flow and what's happening in the human brain when we get into that flow state. And maybe just for listeners who aren't familiar, flows, just describe what you mean by flow.
Yeah. Flow is like when you lose track of time because you're in the midst of something so powerful that you're in it, and suddenly you look up and you've lost 3 hours, right? You're like, wait, what? And it felt like 15 minutes to you, right? That's flow state.
Yeah,
And
you're in a zone.
yeah, yeah, getting in the zone. That's flow state. And so when we're in flow, that's when challenge of something and our skill set sync perfectly. It's like they're peanut butter and jelly and they mesh at just the right time. That's when our self-consciousness kind of goes away and you become totally immersed in this, right? So the benefits of flow when we're in that state is that we begin to make these novel connections. And I guarantee you, your listeners have had this experience where you've been working on a problem, a challenge, something for days, and it's been driving you nuts. And then suddenly you go take a shower and you're like, forget it. I'm just going to forget about it for a bit. Or you go take a walk. And in 20 minutes, your brain has unraveled everything. And suddenly,
Totally.
boom, you come up with the
Yep.
answer.
Yes,
Right?
absolutely.
That's that novel connection that's working. Flow state enables us to get there faster. So when we're doing that, we're absorbing and retaining information more effectively. We're learning faster. We're literally learning faster when we're in flow state. It enhances motivation and it reduces our fear of failure. It allows us to cope with stress in a whole different way. Like, getting into flow is one of the best things that you can do. And the easiest way to get into it is to find your creative access point, that thing that you could get lost in for hours. It might be a Sudoku puzzle. I don't know.
Uh-huh.
But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Don't put judgment on what it is. You find it, you follow it. It gets you in that flow state. The benefits to that are tremendous.
Well, and I love in the book how you talk about you can't force flow, but you can
Mhm.
create the environment, create the conditions that make it more likely to occur. So whether you're an educator,
Yeah.
whether you're a professional, a parent, and many of us fall into multiple of these categories, there
Yeah.
you give really practical tips on how to create the conditions that make flow more likely to occur. So really love
Yeah.
that. Talk to us about some of the other benefits of being in a flow state beyond what we might imagine. And I think you referred to this earlier. One of them, I thought it was really interesting in your book. You talk about one benefit is a release of BDNF, brain derived neurotrophic factor. Am I saying that right? Talk
Yeah.
to us about that.
So this is kind of like the creative cocktail that happens, right? Like you start with dopamine starts to take over and you start to see pattern recognition that comes from the dopamine, and that's going to spur your motivation. And then you get norepinephrine that sharpens your focus. So you start to see these pieces happening at the same time. And then those endorphins keep you fully engaged. So you have this bliss cocktail going on that
I love that.
which is amazing, right? And you're right. And it can last for hours. Sometimes that the benefits from that can last for days.
Mm.
And so, I mean, if there's no better drug to be on than being in a creative state. And it literally has the same health benefits as going for a walk or having exercise or a lot of other things that we see that are beneficial for us. Get yourself creative. It is a prescription for health, but outside of that, you're right. The environments that we create, again, this is where getting curious is going to help you, because when you notice, hey, I was just in that flow, I totally experienced that. Look around. What was it like? How did you craft that environment? Was it quiet or did you have music on?
Mm.
Did you have a certain light or did you have candle? What did you set up for yourself to get you into that flow state so that you can optimize that for yourself? And you're right. You're never going to force it. But if you take notice of the things that work for you to get you in flow state, like for me, when I'm writing, there's a specific composer, David Lanz, and he has I think a set of albums. It's called Christopher's Dream, and he has the whole album. If I play that, I will immediately go into flow, and I know it.
Interesting.
So when I want to get
I have
into
some
that
of his
state, I
piano
know that
music.
about myself. Yes, but I know that about myself for whatever reason. It was like a key in my brain that if I turn that on while I'm writing, you'll lose me for a
Magic
couple of hours.
happens.
Yes, yes. So just pay attention.
Sure.
Be curious, pay attention, you'll find it.
I love that BDNF is called Miracle Grow for the
Yeah,
brain. And it is like a
it's true. It does. I mean, like the neuroscientists they're funny people, right? They come up with some great stuff, but it's all true. Like you will grow, you literally learn faster. That's the miracle grow of it. That what would have taken hours, days to learn something, you can learn in a very short period of time when you're in that flow state.
And if I understood your book right, that BDNF is actually a protein that helps neurons form new connections and it strengthens the connections that are already there. So this is
Yep.
actual real mechanical chemical changes that are happening, which is really fascinating. You mentioned
Yeah.
dopamine. That's kind of that reward system. And I just think about
Mm.
that. I taught piano lessons for years and I think about learning piano is hard and it can be very
Yeah.
frustrating. That's one of the benefits of taking it is it develops that frustration tolerance. But
Yeah.
another side benefit of that is when you stick through and work through something and finally get
Yeah.
your hands to do what your brain has been trying to get them to do, like play the right hand louder than the left hand or something like
Yeah.
that, then there is this dopamine response, this reward like, wow,
Yes.
this was
The
really hard and I
satisfaction.
did it. Yes, it's so
Yeah.
satisfying. And even though it's hard work, it makes you want to go back for more.
Yeah, scientists actually have a term for that. They call it hard fun. Richard Hazy, I
Ah,
believe, coined that term, hard fun. And I think of that a lot especially when I'm teaching, is thinking about where's the sweet spot where it's hard fun, where it's just challenging enough that when you get it, you get that release and you're like, yes, let's level up one more,
yeah.
right? That it's constantly pushing you forward rather than frustrating you.
Yes. Yep. Love that. You mentioned in the book too that when we are in this flow state, we develop cognitive reserve, which is kind of like
Mhm.
backup for our brains. And anyone of any age, especially the older we get, we want to be
Mhm.
building more and more of that cognitive reserve. So many benefits to flow and creativity, and like you called it creative episodes. I love that. Beyond just that they feel good, but
Yeah.
the more we experience those creative moments, the more likely we are to experience more of them. Like you said, improved learning, increased motivation, the satisfaction
Yeah.
that comes with the dopamine. So, really love all that. I know we're running short on time here, which I knew we would. I could talk about this book for a long time. You talk in the book about the 5 pillars of creative practice, and really give some very practical, pragmatic strategies of how to develop creative practice. So, really like that. One term that I heard that I read in your book for the first time, and now I'm seeing it other places, is agentic AI.
Oh, yeah.
Is that how you
Agentic.
say it? And that refers to
Agentic.
agency? Okay,
Yes. Well, it's, kind of like, if you consider you had, like, a small army of agents that are working for you, agentic AI. So,
okay.
these are when you're thinking of, like, the customer care folks, or when you make your call to your credit card company and you get on the phone with somebody who maybe has a heavy accent or doesn't that you don't understand, and that's clearly reading from a script. Agentic AI is replacing those jobs with AI tools and bots that when you call, they do not have an accent. They're programmed in your region, so your dialect. So if I'm from the South and I call an agent to work with me on my credit card bill, I'm gonna get somebody with a Southern accent
Oh, wow.
because that's somebody that I can relate to. They can program these agentic AIs to sound exactly like somebody down the street from you
Wow.
that connects with you,
That would be
um,
really
and
helpful.
then can actually answer your questions.
Yeah.
So not just reading from a script, but that can actually pivot. Yes, so, like, when you're like, "No, I don't I've said number 2, not number 1,
Right.
please," like,
Right.
no, it eliminates all of the frustrating components, and it helps people get answers much faster.
Love it. Well, your book is very hopeful. I know a lot of people have had sort of a zombie apocalypse approach to AI, like the world is ending. And you quote a Cornell Tech research team. They say the future of creativity isn't about humans versus AI, but humans with
Mhm.
AI.
With
And I really
AI.
love the
Yeah.
hopeful and motivating and inspiring tone of your voice. There's a quote that I
Yeah.
want to read from your book. You say, "The rise of the creative machine isn't the threat to human creativity that so many fear, but an invitation to redefine and reinvigorate it. It's
Mhm.
a call to explore new forms of creative partnership and to push the boundaries of what we think is possible. And it's a reminder that even in an age of artificial intelligence, the most powerful creative force in the universe remains the human imagination." So really love that quote.
Thank you.
Well, yes. Anything else you want to tell listeners about the book before we close things out with the coda?
Yeah, I just make sure if you're gonna pick up a copy, please share it. I just wanna spark dialogue as much as we can. It's so necessary. It's been on the back shelf for so long. It's time that this comes forward because not for us, but I look at my daughter, my nephews, my nieces, the kids that I work with. This is the future that they're gonna need to be prepared for. It's up to all of us to be able to have the conversations needed for that.
Absolutely agree. Well, this has been so fun, Susan. As you know, I ask all my guests to close out our conversation with a musical ending, a coda,
Mhm.
by sharing a musical tool for listeners. Do you have a musical tool that you can share with us today?
I do, Mindy. So, in the spirit of AI and creativity, there's a tool called Beethoven.ai. So, it's Beethoven dot AI. It's an AI music generator to create your original background music. So, if you want to create a story or a film or even just a little snippet that you put online, to go with your background of a birthday party, you can create your original background music with the help of AI. It's a really fun tool. It's something that I like to play with, but it's also kind of interesting to see, the mix and match that people can do, and nothing is ever repeated. So it's a great tool.
Oh, interesting. I'll have to check that out. Thanks so much to Susan for sharing her insights on the power of creativity in this conversation and in her book. I hope you've been as inspired as I have to cultivate your own creative practice, whether it's in the workplace, in your kiddos or your own education, or in your everyday life. Susan also has a podcast of her own called Artworks for Teachers. It's a podcast to help teachers crack the code of creativity and use it as a hidden advantage in the classroom. There are links in the show notes to her podcast, website, the website for the Institute of Arts Integration and STEAM that Susan founded, and of course, Susan's new book. If you have not already signed up for my Soundbites email newsletter, just a heads up that the next issue will include a chance to win a free brand new book, which is releasing soon and featured in an upcoming episode. The free book offer will only be available to Soundbite subscribers, so be sure to sign up with a link in the show notes. This is an occasional newsletter, no more than once a month. So you will not be inundated with emails when you sign up for this. And of course, you can unsubscribe at any time. You can always connect with me on email, mindy@mpetersonmusic.com, Facebook, Instagram, X, or LinkedIn. Thank you so much for joining me today and for sharing this show. Until next time, may your life be enhanced with music.